Okay, we're recording. A very, very hearty Yasher Koyach again to Linda and Ilan Babajana for hosting us. That's always a lot of fun. And again, these lunch and learns are only happening because Ilan is always on my case about having them. So we would not be enjoying this food together, this camaraderie, this fellowship, without Ilan and without Linda. So thank you very much for both of you for everything you do.
Of course, thank you for bringing all the time.
I really appreciate it, so I'm very glad.
Well, usually, Rabbi Plotkin spends hours in the kitchen on Monday night, and then I have to spend hours in the kitchen heating everything up and getting it all ready in the morning. So this actually takes. So we're both working. I'm preparing the class on Mondays, and he's preparing the food.
Thank you for that.
And he's taking the. He's teaching his class, and I'm preparing the food on Tuesdays. So it's a division of labor, right? All right. So I'm going to assume that Ilan has given us a license to go ahead without him. So in our parsha, in almost documentary style, we have the orderly mobilization of the Jewish people as they leave Mount Sinai. They're on their way to Eretz Yisrael. They're on their way to the land of Israel. And the Parsha records in full detail how they would signal, that it's time to depart. They had trumpets, they had clouds of fire and clouds itself that would initiate travel or initiate encampment. And in the midst of these busy preparations, we read about how Moshe extends an invitation to his father-in-law to join them, in coming along with them on their way to Eretz Yisrael, the Promised Land. But as soon as they set off to Eretz Yisrael, we read, and this is going to be in source number 1. It was the second year, the second month, and the 20th of that month. The cloud rose from on top of the tent of meeting, or the tent of testimony, which was the Mishkan, it's where the Aron was. Vayisu v'nei Yisrael l'masehem mimidbar Sinai. And the Bnei Yisrael, they traveled on their way from the desert of Har Sinai. Vayisu mehar Hashem, they traveled from Har Sinai. Derech shloshes yomim, they were on the road for 3 days. Va'aron bris Hashem nosei lifneim, and the Aron, the ark, traveled before them, 3 days before them. Lo sur lahem menucha, to find a place for them to rest. It was going around trying to, locate a good place to encamp. So they're en route. They've embarked on a path that should, at least as we read in Sefer Devarim, should only take them 11 days. Soon, very, very soon, they're going to be in Eretz Yisrael. And all would seem to be on course to reach a glorious culmination, except suddenly, unexpectedly, there's a crisis that erupts in the camp. It begins with a cry, it begins with a complaint, and that complaint, which seems very simple on the surface, spreads like wildfire. And we're going to see that this generates a series of catastrophes that escalates to the point where it becomes a full-on crisis. So let's take a look and read about the first installment of the people's desire for meat. So this is source number 2. The asafsuf, which is a funny word, the asafsuf, which means the gathered, the riffraff, the rabble, the no-goodniks, the people. This is the Eruv Rav, the people who sort of joined along with the Jewish people as they left Egypt, but who were not of Jewish pedigree. Asher b'kirbo his avu ta'ava. This is the group that seems to be not part of Egyptian society. They're leaving because they think that things will go well for them, along with the Jews. This is not a divinely motivated group of people, and this is a group of people who are exceptionally desirous for meat. Vayashuvu vayivku gam b'nei Yisrael. And through their sitting and through their wailing, they also inspired the Jewish people to sit and wail as well. Vayomru mi ya'achilenu basar. Who's going to feed us meat? Zocharnu es hadoga asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam. We remember the fish that we could eat freely in Egypt. Esa kishumi. Remember the cucumbers, Be'ez ha'avatichim, as well as the melons. Be'ez ha'chatzir, we remember the leeks. Be'ez ha'betzalim, we remember the onion. Be'ez ha'shumim, we remember the garlic. V'ata nafshenu yevesha, ein kol bilti el hamon einenu. Now our souls are dried out because we have nothing that we can see to eat except the man, except the manna. And then the pasuk goes on to describe this man wasn't such bad stuff. It was shaped in the shape of a coriander seed, and it had the appearance of crystal. Excuse me. The nation would spread out. They would collect the man, they would grind it in a mill, or they would pound it in a mortar. They would boil it in a pot. And they would turn it into cakes, and it tasted like, fine oil. Tasted really, really good. It says, "Uveredas hatol al hamachna laila yered haman alav." Every night the dew would fall in the camp, and the man would fall down on the dew. Vayishma Moshe es ha'am b'chol mishpachosav ish pesach aholo. Moshe heard all this crying, all this weeping. Vayichar af Hashem. The wrath of God was aroused, ma'od, greatly. Ve'enei Moshe ra, and in the eyes of Moshe, this was evil. So how would you assume Moshe would respond? And all other example of the times that the Jewish people have sinned, Moshe defends us to Hashem. And he protects us. He advocates for us. He is an incredible advocate. However, here, his response is uncharacteristic. Let's take a look at source number 3. Vayomer Moshe el Hashem. And Moshe, uncharacteristically, in a collapse of self-confidence, hands over his resignation to Hashem, and he says, Lama haresa la'avdecha. Why have you done evil to me, your servant? Why have I not found grace in your eyes? Why have you done something so dastardly to place the burden of bearing this nation upon me? Hanochi harisi askol ha'am hazeh. Am I the parent of this entire nation? Imanochi ladati. Did I give birth to him? They should say to me, he's now using a bit of metaphor, they're like babies who are asking me to carry them every step of the way. How can I, where am I going to find meat to give this entire people? This that they're crying to me for. Give us meat and we'll eat it. I can't alone bear this nation. It's too heavy for me. And if this is what you're going to do to me, he's telling Hashem, Hargeni na harog basically says, kill me now, if I found grace in your eyes. But we read that Hashem has no plan to allow Moshe to resign. And here we find source number 4, which is on page number 3. So, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Esfali shivim ish miziknei Yisrael. Gather for me 70 elders of Israel, Asher Yodata, the ones that you know about. Kihem ziknei ha'am v'shotrav. These are the elders of the nation and its officers. V'lokachta osam el ohel moed. You'll gather them to the ohel moed. V'yisyatzvu sham imach, and they will stand there with you. V'yoradati, I will descend. V'dibarti imach sham, and I will speak with you there. V'otzalti min haruach asher olecha, and I will emanate from this spirit that is upon you. V'samti aleim, and I will take some of that spirit that's upon you and put it on them. V'lo sisa ato levadecha, and you will no longer bear this nation alone. Ve'la'am tomar, and to the nation you will say, he's kadushu l'machar, prepare yourself tomorrow. V'achaltem basar, because you will eat meat. Lo yom echad tochlun, v'lo yomayim. You're not going to eat it for 1 day. You're not going to eat meat for 2 days. V'lo chamisha yomim, v'lo asar yomim, v'lo esrim yom. Not for 5 days, not for 10 days, and not for 20 days. Ad chodesh yomim. You're going to eat meat for 30 days. Ad asher yetze me'apchem, until it extrudes from your nostrils. V'hoya lechem lazara. It will be abhorred. It will be gross to you. Yan ki ma'astem es Hashem asher b'kirbechem, because you have abhorred God who is in your midst. V'tivku lefanav, for you have wept before him. Lamor, saying, Lama zeh yatzanu mimitzrayim, why have we left Egypt? So, excuse me. And so we read about Hashem telling Moshe, you know what? You tell the Jewish people you're going to have so much meat that you're going to get sick of it, and it's going to be gross. It's going to be abhorrent to you. And then we conclude with source number 5. Vayetze Moshe went out, Vayedaber el ha'am, and he spoke to the nation as Divrei Hashem. It's the words of God. Vayesov shivim ish miziknei ha'am. He gathered 70 people from the elders of the nation. Vaya'amed osam sevivos ha'ohel. And he had them surround. He positioned them around the tent of meeting. Vayered Hashem be'anon. Hashem descended in a cloud. Vayedaber elav, and he spoke to him, saying, "I spoke to Moshe. Vayotzel min haruach asher alav vayiten al shivim ish hazakenim vayika noach aleim haruach v'yiznabu v'lo yosofu." And the Spirit of Hashem, which was upon him, was given to the 70 elders, and it rested upon them, and they prophesied, and they did not cease their prophecy. And then Moshe gathered himself and all the elders to the encampment. Excuse me. A wind traveled from before Hashem, and it collected the quail from the sea. And they were placed down around the encampment a day in every direction. And there was a stack of them 2 cubits high over the entirety of the land. So there's a lot of birds. The entire nation got up that night, that day, and the next day, they collected, or they gathered the quail. The least of them gathered 10 donkey loads of quail. And they spread them out all over the camp. The meat was still between their teeth. And then all of a sudden they were struck with the plague. The wrath of God burnt within them. And Hashem afflicted them with a great plague. The place was called Kivros Hatava, which essentially means the graves of desire. Because there, those who desired were buried. And there are many, many questions that shout to us from this text. So many things are happening at the same time. We have this inexplicable desire for meat. We have the strange phenomenon of the prophecy of the 70 elders. We have Moshe's uncharacteristic desperation. We have Hashem's anger. But maybe the first thing we should ask is that we seem to have 2 different stories that are woven together. On one hand, we have the story about this wild craving for meat, and the people are restless. They don't want to eat the manna alone anymore. They want an alternative. And God gives them a solution by sending them the quail. At the same time, he punishes them for their disrespect. And this is story number 1. Story number 2, it's related, but it's distinct. It's a crisis of leadership felt by Moshe. He's very uncharacteristically desperate in this. And he's, normally our defender, he seems to completely reject his role of leadership. And the second story involves the 70 elders. Again, so we have on one hand the story of meat and the story of leadership, 2 seemingly related but separate stories. But the stories are connected. They're not really a single narrative, but the Torah strings them together as though they're one. Take a look at how the Torah is structured. On the very bottom of page 4, you have verses 4 to 15, the desire for meat. 11 to 15, Moshe's crisis of leadership. 16 to 17, we have the 70 elders given by God in response. We have the meat. We have the prophecy then of the 70 elders. And then we have the meat being given out, and we have the punishment. There's no good reason to mix these 2 stories together, yet the Torah chooses to intersperse them. Why? Why are these 2 seemingly disparate and separate stories put together as though it were a single happening, a single narrative? But we can have to ask perhaps a more important question first. Why does Moshe collapse here? This is very, very extreme for Moshe. And as we've noted, Moshe has been a defender of the Jewish people from the beginning through to the end. He's protected us from the wrath with the golden calf and with Mara and with event after event after event. And why here does he seem to have such a crisis of leadership? And for that matter, what prompts this crisis of leadership? It's this uncontrolled desire for meat that the people have. We see them collecting mounds of meat. Each person, the least of which, we're told, collected 10 donkey loads of quail. Why, at this particular juncture in the story, are the people seem to be so desirous of meat that they seem to throw out such incredible abandon? And one final question is, in what way did the 70 elders assist Moshe in this moment of crisis? We don't see them taking on leadership roles from this point forward. We don't see that they form a national parliament or a public action committee. We see them bestowed with the gift of prophecy, and that's all we're really told. And it's not even their own prophecy, it's by virtue of Moshe, right? It's something that's taken from Moshe's great, grandiose, incredible spirit, his incredible ruach, that was shared with the other people. But these individuals themselves don't seem to have earned it or acquired it on their own. So how is this going to help Moshe in this moment of loneliness, desperation, and his feeling that he just couldn't cope? So let's begin by examining the people's complaint, first of all. Let's take a look very, very closely at the language that's used. And we're going to take a look at source number 2 once again. That's on page number 1. So it says, and the riffraff, or the rabble in their midst, felt a gluttonous craving, and then the Israelites wept and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. And now our souls are all dried out. There's nothing at all, nothing but this manna to look to. Now the phraseology of this complaint raises some very clear contrast or comparison between the mun and the meat. Now, and not only that, but we would see that in reality, these two, there's another narrative within the story that seems to be very, very similar. And this took place a year earlier. Let's take a look at source number 7, because this isn't the first time that the Jewish people are asking for sustenance. They're asking for food. And let's contrast these two sources. We have more here, Elon.
More here.
Yeah.
Here.
You keep going.
Right. Well, there's one by Elon's seat too. So let's take a look at source number 7. Source number 7 here describes something that took place a year earlier. What does it say? Vayilonu kol hadas b'nei Yisrael al Moshe v'al b'midbar. The nation of Israel, they complained against Moshe in the desert. They grumbled. Vayomer aleim b'nei Yisrael mi yitein museinu b'yad Hashem. Why have we been given to die by the hand of Hashem? Or woe that we would have been killed by Hashem in the land of Egypt. There in Egypt, at the very least, we had access to the sir habasar, the flesh pots. We were able to eat as much bread as we wanted. Now we've been taken out into this desert so that we shall all die in hunger. And so what does Hashem say? Hashem says to Moshe, behold, I'm going to cause for a rain for you tomorrow made of bread from the heavens. The nation went out and they collected the amount, a measure each day for the day. And the entire house of Israel, they called this sustenance, this bread that came down from Shemaim, mun, and it was like Kazera God, it was like the seed coriander. Lavan, it was white, and it tasted like wafers in honey. So the two stories are very, very similar. This one is in Sefer Shemos, and it's talking about the Jewish people's hunger and God's miraculous solution for the hunger. It also mentions their meat, by the way. But the differences between the two stories are incredibly crucial. In the story in Shemos, God doesn't get angry. And likewise, Moshe doesn't lose his cool. In fact, the entire episode is almost conducted as though it was very calm they were calm in their manner. As though God is simply just waiting for the people to formally ask for food, and then he provides it. Why then, in our case over here, is this lusting for meat so different? Why does it cause God to get furious and Moshe to be distressed? Well, I think the reason is because there's a year in between. The entire year has passed. And in that intervening time, a lot has transpired. When the Jewish people first left Egypt, they were a slave nation. They were used to being given everything that they needed for the day. And they found it difficult to fend for themselves, so their complaint seems to be justified. But now, a year later, they're no longer a slave nation. They've received the Torah at Har Sinai. They've experienced the miracles. They've constructed the Mishkan. The people are very, very different. You would hope that they would have grown. You would have hoped that they would have matured. Now they have a national system. They have leaders. They have tribes. They have judges. They have a system of government. They formed a nation with their own religious, spiritual identity and ideology. So they should have more patience. They should have a more sophisticated way of coping with problems of this sort. But they don't. They seem to have failed. And perhaps that was an expression of failure to grow. Initially, we see that they had legitimate reason to complain. They didn't have any food. Now they have food. They have the manna, but now they're complaining. The manna or the man or the manna or the mun or the manna didn't pass muster any longer. They wanted meat. So you have to ask them the question. They said, our souls are all dried out. Is the problem their soul, or is the problem their stomach? And probably it's a problem literally with their soul. There's a spiritual dimension. People, by this point, should be aware that God can provide for them, and He's done so in the past. Why do they wail? Why do they bemoan the fact that they've left Egypt? In fact, they say, let's go back to Egypt at this point. For meat? You've just done so much. You've witnessed so much. You've received the Torah. You've built the Mishkan. Now you want to go back because you want steak? It seems to be an erasure of the process. They seem to be reverting. And we see that the text itself seems to contrast and compare the quail with the mun. For example, when we read about how they collected the mun, each person collected, and it was done with the atmosphere of restraint or control. Each person collected a omer. They collected, even if they collected a lot, each person got according to their need. How are they described as gathering or collecting the slav, the quail? It was done hand over fist, measure by measure. The smallest measure of the smallest person collected just an exorbitant, copious amount. This desire for meat and the abandon in which they approached its collection is symptomatic of a deep-seated problem. This indicates a method or a mode of thinking which is not Jewish. It's the pagan expression of lust for physical gratification, a gratification which can never reach its fulfillment. And this mindset is alien to Judaism. And perhaps this is the reason why the Torah views the cries as being such an abhorrent thing, and why Moshe seems to completely lose his cool. Because they're only 10 days out of Israel. They're really, really close. They've received the Torah. Now they're talking about going back, and it's all over meat. This seems to be quite a serious problem. So we've explained why Moshe seems to just completely lose it. We explained why does that Hashem gets all upset, because this desire for meat represents a real backslide and a real fundamental problem of the psyche that the Jewish people had at that time. But let's now connect this with the story of Moshe and the 70 elders. So we've explained the meat-manna connection, and we've also given an explanation for Moshe's disillusionment and God's fury. But what do the elders have to do with all this? Why are the Zakanim here in the story? When we compare the language of the two stories, and if you take a look at the Hebrew, you'll actually see that I've highlighted or I've emboldened certain words. We find that there are certain words that connect the two stories together. One word that seems to be used in both narratives, the story of the meat and the story of the elders, is the word saviv, where the Jewish people went around the camp to collect the slav, to collect the quail, and the elders are positioned around the Ohel Moed. So we see that there's a linguistic connection between these two narratives, these two stories. And furthermore, also, the word asaf comes up about 7 times, also in both narratives, to gather. Moshe gathers himself. He gathers the elders. The people gather they gather the quail. You see that the words come up over and over and over again. 7 times we see that the word asaf is used, indicating that these two narratives are joined. Linguistically, they're connected. So the Torah is coming to teach you, the Torah is coming to tell us that this is all one story, all one narrative. And not only that, but even, who are the people who caused the problem? The asaf suf. What's the shorish of the word asaf suf, Linda? Do you know? It's asaf. It means have been gathered. The people who have been gathered in.
Asaf, Ken.
Right. So we see that the people who are causing the problem also, by their very nomenclature of what they're called, has the theme, the word. There's a literary expression. Was it the Welt? Oh gosh. And there's an expression that's used in literature to describe the one word that's used as a theme that connects it all together. So we see that the stories are connected and it's all one narrative. So how? What is the connection between the story of the meat and the story of prophecy? So if the stories are to follow a single narrative, then we have to explain why they're intertwined, and we have to say that the words meat and the word spirit are also used repetitively, also 14 times in total. The meat, for example, is brought by the word ruach, by the spirit. And the word spirit, ruach, is used to describe the prophecies. We see also that there is a connection between the meat and the ruach of prophecy. Ruach means wind or spirit. We see also that there's this literary connection between the meat and the spirit. So what exactly is the connection therein? On a superficial level, we might say that the expansion of Moshe's ruach, his divine spirit, was an attempt to magnify the spirit in the camp as a counterweight to the attraction of the meat. I can say that's one way. We know that the meat and the words meat and ruach are connected, and we also know the word for prophecy is also used ruach. But there's at another level, it's not superficial at all. The divine connection of Moshe's prophecy is contrasted by the text with the materialistic aspirations of the people. And the question which is being asked in the Israelite camp is, what spirit is going to prevail? The spirit of God or the human desire for meat? The word asaf that we use, is it going to be used to gather prophecy, like it's used on one side, on one parts of the story? Is it going to be used to describe gathering meat and how people lusted for physical pleasures? God shows them that the spiritual shallowness of their desire for meat is to their detriment. Even a powerful desire, even ones for meat, will, if overly satisfied, can become gross. You eat so much meat that you never want to touch it again. They're going to eat an entire month until it comes out of their nostrils and becomes loathsome, as the Torah says. And the people will reach a saturation point. They will lose their desire. Hashem is trying to show them that this is a lesser desire. Yet at the same time, the prophecy of God is bestowed on 70 choice individuals. On one hand, prophecy doesn't offer immediate gratification. God's spirit can reach man, but it is only bestowed on those who are chosen, those who are worthy. And God demonstrates that His Spirit is available to anyone if they take the effort to reach the high spiritual standards demanded by a prophet. To connect with God, you have to be learned. You have to be an upstanding member of the community. But when you get the prophecy, it never leaves you. As the Pasuk says, their prophecy never ceased. Moshe himself says, I wish that the entire people were prophets at one point. So we see here that Hashem is indicating to the Jewish people a response. Here you have 70 elders. They're not going to receive the immediate gratification of eating meat, but the spirit of prophecy is something that they will enjoy for the rest of their life. As opposed to the desire for meat, it will become so abhorrent to you that you will never want to eat quail again. And again, this comes at a very important juncture. The Jewish people are now being pressed with a question. Who are they? Who are they going to be? They're about to enter the land of Israel. They're only 10 days away. This moment is really, really key, and it crystallizes a very important question, which will be answered as we continue reading through the text and as the coming weeks continue. That it really begs the question: who are Am Yisrael? What are their priorities? Are they driven by the spirit, or are they driven by their stomach? And the quail, therefore, becomes something of an axis for the Jewish people and who they are going to become, because it highlights what their priorities are right now and who and what they need to be. So again, we asked a series of questions. Why was Moshe so upset? Why was God so angry? We said, well, because this seems to be a backslide on the part of the Jewish people. They're reverting back and wanting to go to Israel, wanting to go back to Egypt after experiencing so much and experiencing so much. They should have been at a different plane of their faith. The two narratives are combined together because the answer to one is found within the other. Hashem is teaching the Jewish people something important through giving prophecy to the 70 elders. Hashem is essentially saying, you're now driven by an animalistic, physical desire, but there's a higher calling that anyone can achieve and anyone can reach. And this is an incredibly important question for you, the Jewish people, to be able to answer who you are, what your priorities are going to be, especially as you make the transition from a desert people into those who have been the chosen Am who will settle in Eretz Yisrael. And with that, we conclude the class, and I'm open to questions, comments, or rebuttals.